Hello everyone, and welcome to the Jupyter Notebooks lecture. In this lecture, we'll be showing you how to effectively use the Jupyter Notebook system and giving you a tour of the overall environment. Also, check out the resources for this lecture in order to download the zip file that contains all the notebook files. So as I mentioned, check the resources for this lecture and download the zip file. It contains all the .ipynb files, those are notebook files, and those notebooks for the rest of this course. Make sure you remember where you saved and unzipped that file. Let's go ahead and explore the notebooks as well as get a feel for how to effectively use them. I'm going to go ahead and just remind you how you can open up a Jupyter notebook. I'm going to go ahead and jump to the command prompt now. Alright, here I am at my command prompt. As a reminder, if you're using Mac OS, go ahead and just use your terminal for this. If you're using Windows, just go ahead and come over here to start and type in CMD and select your command prompt. There's also an Anaconda command prompt. You can use that as well. That's the command prompt that comes with the Anaconda distribution. Alright, so you'll go ahead and come to this command prompt and then type in Jupyter space notebook and hit enter. Keep in mind, this is going to start a Jupyter notebook wherever you are in the command prompt. So for instance, let me go ahead and delete this real quick. I am under C users and then my middle name here, Marcial. And that's where my notebook is going to get started. If I want to start my notebooks in another directory, I need to change directory. The way I can change directory is by using cd and then typing in the next file that I want. So let's say I wanted to go to my downloads folder because that's where I downloaded the zip file. I could start typing in DON, and you can actually tab autocomplete this, and then it should take you to, if you go ahead and click enter now, downloads. And then I could type in Jupyter Notebook, hit enter and run this, and now my Jupyter Notebook file is going to be, when I show it in my browser, under the downloads folder. If you want to go ahead and go back up one folder, you can type in cd, that's change directory, space, dot, dot. And that will take you back up one directory. You can go ahead and just look up basic command prompt lines. They're a little different depending if you're using Mac OS or Windows. For instance, if you want to see old directory folders in your current directory, in Windows that's dir to see directory, and this basically shows you all the files here in your current directory. If you are on Mac, you can type in ls for list all of them. Alright, then to clear everything you have here, if you're on a Windows you can just type in cls. If you're on a Mac you can type in the word clear. Let me go ahead and start the Jupyter Notebook. I'm going to hit enter, and it's going to open up a Jupyter Notebook in my browser. Here it is. I'm going to go ahead and find where I actually saved the unzipped file. Here it is, Python Data Science Machine Learning Bootcamp, and depending on what unzip program you used, you may or may not have this -master at the end. But if you go ahead and click on this folder, you'll see quite a few folders here. Python for data analysis, Python for data visualization, Python crash course, machine learning sections, data capstone projects, big data and Spark, and more. The very first section is under this folder, Python crash course. If you click on that section, or that folder, you'll have the notebook. And here you see the .ipynb files. So pretty much for every lecture where you see me coding something out, there's a folder that has the overall section name, and then there'll be a subfolder of the actual section name, and then the notebook files which correspond to the lecture names. So the very first one is Python crash course. You can go ahead and click on this. It'll take a little time to load. Here it is. And then everything I'll be typing out throughout the lecture is here for you. And pretty much at the beginning of every section of the course, I'll remind you on where you can find the actual notebooks for that section of the course. Since there's quite a few lectures and it may be hard to find it sometimes, I'll be there to guide you. And if you ever have any questions on where to find things, just feel free to post to the Q&A forums and I'll be happy to help you out there. Alright, then after that we'll start Python for data analysis. You'll start the NumPy section, so you'll click on NumPy and see the notebooks for that. Let me go ahead and just walk through how the Jupyter Notebook system works in a general sense. I'm going to go all the way back up to the master, and then I'm going to click New, and here, since I have kind of several environments, I'm just going to click this one, but you can click Python root or Python 3. Whatever it says, just go ahead and click on it. It should be fine. Again, you can just click New. Whatever it says under Notebooks, you should be fine to click on it. You'll get something like this. To retitle this notebook, you can just click here under the Untitled section and name it whatever you want. My notebook, for instance, click OK, and it'll name it. Let me go ahead and show you the basics. This is a code cell, which means I can type in Python code into the cell and then run it. As a very basic example, I can say print hello, and then I can run this cell by clicking here on run, and it will go ahead and run and show me the output below the cell. I can also do the same thing for basically any Python code. If I wanted to know what 1 + 1 is, I just click run here, and it shows me the output in the cell. Notice since I printed the output here, it didn't show out. Since I didn't actually specify to print the output, it showed it output cell. So if I actually said print 1 + 1, then it wouldn't show that little out. Okay, so you don't always have to come up here and click this run cell. What you can do is actually just do Shift Enter. And that's, let me put it as a string, Shift Enter. And if I do Shift Enter, it will go ahead and run whatever is in that cell. So keep that in mind. That's a really nice way to just run stuff quickly so you don't have to constantly come over here and click Run Cell. Another little trick is Alt Enter. If I do Shift Enter on this, it just goes down to the next cell. But if I do Alt Enter, it will actually insert a cell below it as well. So notice the difference here. If I just do Shift Enter on this first cell, it runs it. And notice how the in changes its number to show you the order of stuff and how it's been run. Then if I do Alt Enter, it actually inputs a cell for me. That's a really nice trick, and I'll show you why later on when we discuss exercises. Okay, now you may be wondering, how can I save this notebook? You can just either do Control-S or click here on the little floppy disk, save, and it actually has an autosave feature, so around every 2 minutes it will autosave, or you can just say File, and you can do a save and checkpoint here. Now you may also be wondering, how do I download this notebook as something else? Well, you can just go to File, Download As, and you actually have a bunch of options here to download. If you just want the .py file, you can just say download as a .py, and it will download and convert this notebook file into a .py file so you can use it as a normal Python script in whatever IDE you want. Or if you just want the HTML notes, you can click here on HTML, and it will export it to a basic HTML file that any browser can show. So you have a bunch of options there. You can go ahead and check them out. Something else I want you to know is if you ever have, for instance, an infinite while loop running, so let's just say this is like running forever and you want to somehow restart your kernel, what will happen is under this in, let me zoom in a bit, instead of a number here in in, you'll see a little asterisk and it'll just be running forever. What you can do is just go ahead and say kernel and then restart the kernel. And it'll say, do you want to restart the kernel? You go ahead and restart. It'll say restarting kernel, and then it'll say kernel ready. Basically what happens is this notebook is connected to a kernel, and a kernel is kind of just an instance of Python running. And if something's wrong where Python is crashing, maybe you accidentally wrote a script that just infinitely loops or takes a really long time, you can always just stop everything by coming over to kernel and clicking restart. You can also interrupt if you just want to interrupt that specific cell, but sometimes it doesn't work if you did a really bad while loop that runs forever. Just keep that in mind. Okay, if you ever need help in addition to everything I just told you here, you can always just click help, and then it'll give you help on a lot of the libraries we're going to be working with, as well as just notebook help. You can click on that, and it'll send you to a link where it tells you about the notebooks themselves. Keep in mind, these notebooks used to be called IPython notebooks, but now since Jupyter can run other languages such as Julia and R, they're called the Jupyter notebooks now. Another thing I wanted to mention is there's more keyboard shortcuts than what I just told you. You can go to Help, click on Keyboard Shortcuts, and it will give you a list of all the keyboard shortcuts that are available to you. Alright, that's really the basics of the notebook and pretty much all you need to know as far as you go through this course. If you have any questions that are more specific to a particular topic that you can't find under the Help here, go ahead and search the Q&A forums. If you can't find it there or in the FAQ, feel free to post a new question to the Q&A forums and I'll be happy to help you out. Real quick, I wanted to show you what exercises look like throughout this course. So for instance, let's say you go to Python for Data Analysis, you're on the NumPy section of the course, you've done the lectures, and you're ready to begin the exercise. Every exercise will have a solutions file associated with it. Don't check out the solutions file first, you should check out this exercise file. Then you can go ahead and click on this exercise file. and this one will pop up and look something like this. And this exercise file will have questions for you, and then a cell where you can go ahead and answer those questions. And a lot of times, it'll also show you the expected output. So for instance, here we want to create an array of zeros. Now I know you probably don't know how to do that yet, but keep in mind that if you start typing stuff in this cell, such as print hello, and run this, it will overwrite the output. So just keep that in mind, and that will be more relevant when you actually get to the exercises. Something you may be wondering is, what kind of cell is this that actually just shows text and isn't a code cell? Well, this is known as a markdown cell. If we go ahead and go back to my notebook here, everything I've shown you so far is a code cell. But what's really awesome about Jupyter Notebooks is you can type in notes for yourself in normal markdown text. So you can come over here, click on code, click on markdown, and it will convert this into a markdown cell. And now if I run this cell, it's essentially just basic text for me to type notes for myself, which is really useful when you're learning. You can say something like use print to print strings, run that. That's a little note for yourself, and then you can go ahead and type in print hello, etc. And that's a really nice way to kind of take notes as you go along throughout the lectures. And this also supports markdown formatting. So if you're familiar with markdown formatting, such as how to use hashtags for bold, etc., or maybe do italics with just a couple of asterisks, or bullet points, or indentation for kind of code formatting, that's all supported in these markdown cells. Now, we won't go over markdown syntax because that could be a whole nother course, but just keep in mind if you ever see something like this, type markdown in LaTeX, that says it's a markdown cell. A common mistake sometimes beginners make is they'll accidentally convert this to a markdown cell and then wonder, hey, why isn't my code running? If your code is ever not highlighted, it probably means that you're accidentally running a markdown cell. If you want to change this markdown cell back to a code cell, you just come up here and select code. Then run this with a Shift Enter, and you're good to go. Okay, so remember Shift Enter runs a cell, and then Alt Enter will run a cell and output a cell below it. So if you go ahead and click Alt Enter here, so if I do again Alt Enter, I'm inputting a new cell. Now, I'm just referring to what I'm actually doing on my keyboard, not what I'm typing in as a string. So again, 1 + 1, Shift Enter, it runs it. 1 + 1, Alt Enter, it keeps putting in new cells below it, which is really useful for exercises. So if you come back here to this exercise, notice I have this output array 11111. If I don't want to overwrite that, I can just click on this text or markdown cell, do Alt Enter, and it gives me a little cell here for a buffer. So now I can print whatever I want, Shift Enter, and it outputs test. All right, don't worry if you didn't completely get all of that because we're going to review all this when we actually get to the exercises. All right, that's basically all you need to know for the Jupyter Notebooks. If you have any questions, feel free to post them to Q&A forums, and I'll be happy to help you out. Just keep in mind that the Jupyter Notebook system will start wherever you were in your command prompt or your terminal. You'll need to change directory using CD if you want to run or save your notebooks in another place in your computer. All right, thanks everyone, and I'll see you at the next lecture.